Hello friends, hope you are doing well. In today's video, I am going to explain about the reproduction in organism, which is the chapter 1. Before that, if you are new to my channel, then hit the bell icon and do subscribe to my channel. So let's start. What is reproduction? Reproduction is a biological process of formation of new offsprings from the pre-existing organism. The reproduction is defined as a biological process in which every living organism gives rise to new organisms similar to themselves. Reproduction becomes a vital process without which species cannot survive for long. It ensures continuity of the species generation after generation as the individuals grow older and undergo senescence and ultimately they die. So, what is lifespan? The period of birth to the natural death of an organism represents its lifespan. Lifespan of organisms are not necessarily correlated with their sizes. The lifespan of organism varies from a few days, such as in butterfly, to thousands of years, such as banyan tree. Whatever be the lifespan, the death of individual organism is a certainty. That is, no individual is immortal except a single-celled organism. Here are a list of some name of organism with their respective lifespan. You can go and learn them. So as we know, the reproduction is a biological process by which organism produces its offspring similar to itself. The first of all, the organism or offspring grows, matures, and in turn produces new offspring by the process of reproduction. All living organisms maintain their population and ensure the continuity of the species. So, the lifespan is the process or the period from the birth to the natural death of an organism. After the death of living organism also the population is maintained by the process of reproduction. Here are the basic features of the reproduction. As you can see, the replication of DNA, the cell division which is divided into two processes, one is mitosis and one is meiosis. You have studied this. One is the formation of the reproductive bodies or units such as in fungus, that is spores or sporangia, hyphae, etc. The development of reproductive bodies into offspring. We will be discussing this further. Now the types of reproduction. The reproduction is of two types, asexual and sexual. Based on their type, and we have classified them, that is the when the offspring is produced by a single parent with or without the involvement of the gamete formation, the reproduction is called the asexual reproduction. When the two parents opposite sex participates in the reproduction process and also involves the fusion of male and female gametes, it is called sexual reproduction. Okay, it is based whether the organism can produce with or without any organism or not. That is whether there is one or two organisms taking part in the process of the reproduction. Okay, here you can see it is asexual reproduction. The it is maintained in 2n condition, and in case of meiosis where the sexual reproduction occurs, it is also maintained 2n but the fusion of two different organisms. Okay, here is the difference between the asexual and sexual reproduction. It involves a single organism. Sexual reproduction involves one or two organisms. There is no production of gametes. Here the gametes are produced. Asexual reproduction has no fusion of gametes. And here the fusion of male and female gametes are very much vital. Without this, sexual reproduction cannot occur. It requires only mitotic divisions. It requires meiotic at first, then mitotic. It follows that it produces offspring that are identical to the parent. Okay, but here the offspring will have some characters from male and as well as female, but some characters may or may not be present in either of the parents. In this case, the genetic variation is only through random mutation, but in this case the reproduction is there is more chance of genetic variation occurs. Okay, it is a most significant feature of the sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is not very useful for natural selection in evolution of species. And in sexual reproduction, it is helpful in the evolution as there is variation. It occurs by budding, fragmentation, sporulation, etc. It occurs due to pollination and fertilization. So, asexual reproduction, what is it? Usually followed by the organisms which are relatively simpler organizations. There is no tissue and organ level organization in them. Okay? The offspring is produced by a single parent with or without the involvement of the gamete formation. Offspring produced are generally and morphologically similar to each other and to the parent, that is, they are clones. Clone means identical to elements. Hmm? In Protista and Monera, the parent cells divide into two and give rise to the new individual. Just simple division. It's 2 to 4, just, and 1 to 2. Thus, in this organism, the cell division is a mode of reproduction itself. Okay? In the Protista and Monera, there is no differentiation between the mode of reproduction or the what is cell division. As long as the cell divides, the reproduction continues. Okay? The binary fission, here are some methods. I am going to explain this. In this method of asexual reproduction, a cell divides into two halves and rapidly grows into an adult. Example in amoeba and paramecium. In the asexual reproduction, several lower animals such as protozoan, sponges, few worms, and other tunicates follows this mode of reproduction. And as we know, what is binary fission? Either binary or multiple. It may be multiple, and binary fission is the simplest method observed in the unicellular organisms. On the basis of the plane of division, it is of three types. Simple, no particular plane, example in amoeba. The transverse, the right angle plane to the long axis, example in a planaria. And longitudinal, parallel plane to the long axis, example euglena. Multiple fission involves the division of nuclei into many numbers, followed by the cytoplasmic division, enclosing one nucleus, resulting in many identical daughter cells at the same time. Example in algae, protozoa, fungi, etc. Now coming to the budding. What is budding? Small buds are produced that remain attached initially with the parents and get separated through maturation. Okay. What is budding? The formation of buds from the parent body which later develops into a new organism. It can be external, example in hydra, and or internal such as acinata. Here are the diagrams. You can clearly see this. What is binary fission? There is one cell. The maturation level undergoes, and at first the nuclear material gets separated, then the cytoplasm gets separated, formation of a cell wall or cell plate formation occurs, and then two identical daughter cells are produced. This is case of budding. This is the example of yeast budding. It is a parent yeast cell and the formation of bud took place, and then the cytoplasm divides, and after that they are divided and produced as separate entities. Fungi and simple plants like algae reproduce through special reproductive structures like zoospores and conidia, and the buds of hydra and gemmules. This is the gemmule formation. This is case of hydra where also budding takes place. But in vegetative plants, the vegetative reproduction occurs by the vegetative propagules like the runner, rhizome, sucker, tuber, offset, and bulb. In potato, this type of reproduction occurs, and in the bulb or onion, this type of reproduction occurs. Gemmulation occurs in the freshwater sponges. The fragmentation is also one type of reproductive mechanism where the big fragments from mothers developed into a new organism or new offspring. Example, the sea star. As we can cut them and they are regenerated later. Another example is parthenogenesis, where the egg develops into a new organism without the fertilization. We will be discussing this on later chapters. Before this, the example of parthenogenesis are bees and certain reptiles are there. The advantages of asexual reproduction include the large number of identical offspring, uses of simplest mitotic division, and the dispersal of young ones to long distances. Less adaptability is also there. Weaker daughter cells, no genetic variation are the disadvantages. Water hyacinth. It is known as terror of Bengal. One of the most invasive weeds that grows wherever there is standing water, drains oxygen from water, leads to the death of fishes. Introduced in India because of its pretty flowers and shape of leaves, vegetative propagation occurs as a phenomenal rate. The sexual reproduction is the most common method of reproduction in organisms having the simpler body, like in algae and fungi, but during unfavorable conditions, they shift into sexual reproduction. Okay? The water hyacinth is also called Ecornia crassiensis, commonly known as Jhal Kumbhi. It is called the terror of Bengal because it multiplies itself rapidly and absorbs oxygen which is dissolved in water and causes the lack of oxygen in water, due to which aquatic life starts degrading and facing problem of oxygen, which leads to death of them. Now the most important, sexual reproduction. You know, it involves the formation of male and female gamete by which two individuals having the opposite sex form and give rise to a new individual. The offspring produced by the fusion of male and female gametes not identical to each other or to the parents. All sexually reproducing organisms share a similar pattern of reproduction. In sexual reproduction, the fusion of male and female gametes results in the offspring and that are not identical to their parents. So, sexual reproduction involves the fusion of male and female gametes by the process of fertilization. It occurs in complex multicellular organisms where two haploid cells, you can see two haploid cells, what is n number, give rise to the diploid. And then again comes back to the haploid. You can see this cycle of different sexes are involved. One from the testis producing sperm in the male and the ovaries producing via the females, fuse together to form a diploid zygote at first, and can involve in single organism carrying both sexes known as hermaphrodites, or the two individuals, male and female, individually. Gametes are formed by meiotic division while the zygote divides mitotically to form young ones. Adaptation of youngs to one environment, gene reshuffling, and various are some of the advantages of mode of reproduction. However, it is not frequent as a sexual or uniparallel form. Now, what is the significance or the advantages of the sexual reproduction, or what is the importance of this in our daily life? Variation due to reshuffling of chromosomes and crossing over, sexual reproduction brings about variations in almost all characters so that no two individuals are similar. Vigor and vitality. It maintains the vigor and the vitality of the individual, maintains the power. Uniformity of population. Due to the flow of genes amongst the individual during the sexual reproduction, the uniformity of the population is maintained, where there is a broad resemblance of all the individuals with one another. The evolution, the genetic changes brought about by sexual evolution play an important part in the evolution of new forms of life. Okay? Now there are different phases in the sexual reproduction. As we know, the sexual reproduction occurs only in eukaryotes, and two parent organism contributes half of the new offspring's genetic makeup by creating the haploid gametes. Genetic variation is introduced into the next generation because the mating individuals come from the different genetic backgrounds, and their randomness of which the sperm fertilizes with the egg, and Meiosis, the cell division that produces haploid reproductive cells, creates cells that are genetically different from each other in which parent organism. As I told the significance, now coming to the different phases of life. As you can see, there is a juvenile phase, then after the reproductive phase, then after the menstrual cycle, estrous cycle, and at last the senescent phase. The period between birth and sexual maturity is called the juvenile phase. Okay? In plants, it is known as vegetative phase. The end of juvenile or vegetative phase marks the beginning of the reproductive phase. The reproductive phase, what is that? Some plants show flowering in particular season and some flowers in all seasons. Some other plants like bamboo species flowers once in their lifetime. Stornivolus kunthania and the nilkondanji flowers once in the 12 years. The female placental animals exhibit the cyclic change in the activities ovaries and accessory glands as well as the hormone during the reproductive phase. This is not very much visible in the other organisms. It is mostly visible in plants. Coming to the menstrual cycle, it occurs in monkeys, apes, as well as in human beings. The cycle consists of three phases: menstrual, proliferative, and secretory phase. The blood flows in the last few days of the cycle. The broken endometrium is passed out during menstruation. Female does not permit copulation during the menstrual cycle of the life. The cyclical changes during the reproduction in the primate mammals like monkeys, apes, and humans is known as the menstrual cycle. We will be discussing this in the further chapters. So, what is estrous cycle? It occurs in the non-primates like the cow, sheep, rat, deer, dog, tiger, etc. Okay? These are the cyclical changes during the reproduction in non-primate animals like the cows, sheep, rats, deers, etc. It consisted of short period of estrus or heat. It is of 12 to 24 hours in cow followed by the anestrus or passive period. The blood does not flow in this cycle. The broken endometrium is reabsorbed. Okay? Female permits copulation only when during the estrous cycle. Both in plants and animals, hormones are responsible for the transition between the different phases of their life. Interaction between hormones and environmental factors regulate the reproductive processes. Seasonal breeders In seasonal breeders, the reproductive cycle takes place only in favorable seasons, such as in wild animals. And in case of continuous breeders, they are reproductively active throughout their reproductive phase. And the gametogenesis is the process of gamete formation. In the senescence, phase, it is the end of reproductive phase. The old age ultimately leads to death and events in the sexual reproduction. Reproduction, pre-fertilization, and fertilization, then the post-fertilization. Just coming to these pictures, and as you can see, this prenatal in plants is the juvenile phase where the growth occurs, especially in the plants. Then transition, then the adult reproductive phase is achieved. This is the adult vegetative phase. And this is the menstrual cycle which occurs in mammals such as apes and human beings. It is a follicular phase and this is a luteal phase. At the end of this cycle, if the fertilization does not take place, then the menstrual cycle goes on. This is a picture of estrous cycle. This you need not to know much about this. You just read the definition. That's it. And here is a difference. You can see this is a mature phase and this is the juvenile phase. The pre-fertilization of all the events prior to the fusion of gametes are included in it. It includes the gametogenesis and gamete transfer. The gametogenesis is a process of formation of male and female gametes. Gametes are haploid cells which may be similar or dissimilar in structure in algae. Both gametes are similar in structure called the homogametes. Isogametes in higher organism that reproduces sexually. Two morphologically distinct gametes are formed called heterogametes. Male gametes are called the anthrazoid or sperm and female gametes are called the ovum or egg. In fungi and plants, homothallic and monoecious terms are used to denote the bisexual condition of the heterothallic and dioecious condition are used for the unisexual condition. In flowering plants, the unisexual male flower is staminate that is bearing stamens while the female is pistillate or bearing pistils. As you can see, the gametogenesis in animals. At first, spermatogonium is present, then primary spermatocyte, then coming to the secondary spermatocyte, then spermatids, at last the sperm formation occurs. This is oogonium, then primary oocyte, then secondary oocyte, then ootid, then ovum. And there are first and secondary polar bodies also. The heterothallicism is the mating, then mitosis, then meiosis, then mitosis, then again meiosis. The mitosis and mating type switching takes place in the homothallism. These are the isogametes and these are the heterogametes. What are isogametes? Isogametes are one of the pair of conjugating gametes exhibiting no difference in the form, size, structure or sex. Gametes produced by two morphologically distinct types are called heterogametes. The male gamete is called anthrazoid or sperm and the female gamete is called the ovum or egg. Sexuality in organism. Plants having only one sex is called heterothallic or dioecious. I told you. The plant having both male and female sex organs are called the homothallic and monoecious. In the flowering plants, the unisexual male flower is staminate, bearing stamens, while the female is pistillate, that bearing the pistils, as I said. And animals having one type of reproductive system are called the unisexual, and animals having both male and female reproductive system are called hermaphrodite or bisexual. And the cell division during the gamete formation occurs. The gametes in all heterogametic species are of two types, namely the male and the female. The gametes are always haploid irrespective of parent's ploidy. The gametes are produced by the haploid parent by mitotic division. The gametes are produced by diploid parent by meiotic division. In diploid organisms, the specialized cells are called meiocytes undergo meiosis to produce the haploid gametes. In animals, the species which possess the male and female reproductive organs is similar. Same individual are called the bisexual or hermaphrodites. I've seen. And the both having either male or female are called unisexual. I've also said this. And the gametes are always haploid, although the organism may be haploid or diploid. The diploid organisms form gametes by meiotic divisions. The organism belonging to algae, fungi, and bryophytes have the haploid plant body, and pteridophytes, gymnosperms, angiosperms, and most of the animals are diploid, having the double set of chromosomes. 2n. In organism, such as in diploid organism, gamete mother cell is called meiocyte undergoes meiosis in which one set of chromosome is present in the gametes. Now, what is gamete transfer? In majority of organisms, male gametes are motile and female gametes are non-motile except in fungi and algae in which the both gametes are motile. In simple plants like algae, fungi, and bryophytes and pteridophytes, water is the medium through which the male and female gametes moves. The number of male gametes are much more than the number of female gametes, as most of the male gametes fail to reach the female gametes. In higher plants, the pollen grains are carrier of the male gametes and ovule has eggs. The pollen grains must be transferred from another stigma to facilitate the fertilization. This by the process of the pollination. The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is known as pollination. Pollination may be self or cross. What is self-pollination? One from one anther to one stigma of the same flower in the same flower. It is called self-pollination. And when it is present in two different flowers or flowers of the another plant, it is known as cross-pollination. The pollen grains germinate on stigma to produce pollen tube that delivers the male gametes near the ovule. So, what is gamete transfer? Male and female gamete must be physically brought together to facilitate the fusion called the fertilization. In most cases, the female gametes are non-motile and the male gametes are motile. In case of new fungi and algae, both male and female gametes are motile. In most cases, the medium of gamete transfer is water in them, as I said. And in most cases, the number of male gametes are produced in several thousand times the number of the female gametes because to compensate to loss during transfer. Now, what is the fertilization? Fertilization is a fusion of male and female gamete, and this is also known as syngamy. This results in the formation of diploid zygote. The process of development of new organism without the fertilization of female gametes is called the parthenogenesis. I have used this term in the beginning of the lecture, as you can remember, for example in honeybee, rotifers and lizards. So one egg and one sperm forming a work zygote. The process of fusion of male and female gamete is known as fertilization or syngamy. I've said this. The female gamete undergoes development to form a new organism without the fertilization, and this phenomenon is called the parthenogenesis, which is a modification of sexual reproduction only. The gametic fusion taking place outside the body is called the external fertilization, and there must be the synchrony of the gamete release. Large number of gametes are released to enhance the chance of fertilization. A major disadvantage is that the offspring are extremely vulnerable to predators. The fertilization takes place inside the body is called the internal fertilization. We can see the difference between the external fertilization and internal fertilization. The external fertilization involves the fusion of male gamete and the female gamete occurs outside the body, and internal fertilization occurs inside the body. Both individuals discharge their gametes outside the body, only the male discharges the sperms into the female genital tract. And the development occurs outside the body, such as in the frog, and development occurs inside the body in the humans, birds, cattle, etc. So, the internal fertilization, the fusion of the male and the female gamete occurs inside the female body only. But in case of external fertilization, it involves the fusion of male and female gametes outside the body. And in the case of external fertilization, the chance of survival of offspring are far more. Therefore, a smaller number of eggs are produced. But in case of external fertilization, the chances of survival of offspring are less, so therefore a large number of eggs are produced. In case of internal, there are small numbers of eggs are produced. Okay. Example in humans, cows, hens, and organisms showing the internal fertilization, and the fish, frog, starfish, and organisms showing the external fertilization. In external fertilization, there is no copulation. Okay. The many eggs are released here, and so the zygotes developed outside the body of the parents. This is mainly common in the aquatic animals. No special organ for the transferring of sperm cell into the water is there. In the case of internal fertilization, the copulation occurs by sexual intercourse to transfer the sperm cell or the sex cell or male gamete. Sperm cells are released into the female body through the process of fertilization, and few or single egg are released. Zygote are protected inside the female body, and the special organs known as penis used to transfer the sperm cells into vagina or cloaca. In both cases, sperm cells swim towards the egg cells. Now coming to the post-fertilization events. The post-fertilization events in the sexual reproduction after the formation of the zygote. The zygote is vital link that ensures the continuity of species between the organism of one generation to the next. Every sexually reproducing organism, including the human beings, begin the life as a single cell known as zygote, and this is totipotent. In the organism having the external fertilization, zygote is formed in external medium of water. Those having the internal fertilization, zygote is formed inside the body of the female. In algae and in fungi, zygote develops a thick wall resistant to desiccation and damage. This terminates after the period of rest. In the organism having the haplontic life cycle, the zygote divides to form a haploid spores that germinate to form the haploid individual. So the post-fertilization events refer to all the events of the sexual reproduction taking place after the fertilization, that is after the formation of the zygote. The major event taking place in this stage is known as embryogenesis. We will be talking this in a moment. That is the development of the embryo. The post-fertilization basically involves early embryonic development, establishing multicellularity, formation of blastula, formation of embryonic germ layer. You can see there are multiple stages in the formation of an individual after the fertilization occurs. In case of humans, this is implantation takes place and forms the blastocyst. Blastocyst occurs, then morula, and then cleavage occurs, 8-celled to 4-celled to 2-celled. Okay, then zygote. The egg nucleus is there, the sperm cell nucleus is also there, fertilization occurred, and from there you can see this cycle reversed in a reverse way. Okay, in this diagram we can see there is gametophyte, then gametes, fusion, then zygote. From zygote the sporophyte is there, and the meiosis occurs, then mitosis occurs. It is a cycle. Okay, the haplontic in the haplontic life cycle, as in case of organism that divides to form haploid spores that germinate to form the haploid individual, the zygote, then meiosis, then spores, then gametophyte, then gametogenesis. And this is a development in a dicot plant. There are stages. You can refer this. The zygote, what is zygote? The formation of zygote after the fertilization is found in all sexually reproducing organisms. In the case of external fertilization, the zygote is formed usually in water. As I said, what is embryogenesis? It is a process of development of zygote into an embryo. The process of development of embryo from the zygote is known as embryogenesis. The zygote undergoes the cell division, mitosis, and cell differentiation. During this, the zygote undergoes the mitotic division and cell division. The cell division increase the number, and cell differentiation help in formation of new group of cells and organs. Oviparous are the animals which lay eggs, and development takes place inside the egg, and viviparous animals give birth to the young ones. The development takes place inside the body of the female. So at last we came to the conclusion that those organisms which lay fertilized or unfertilized eggs are known as oviparous, and which give birth to the young ones known as the viviparous. The fertilized eggs remain covered by the hard calcareous cell and laid in the safe place in an environment. After a period of incubation, the young one hatches out. But the viviparous animals or the organisms, the fertilization takes place inside the body, then the zygote develop into the young ones and inside the body of the female organism. The chances of survival of the young ones is less as the female lay egg in an open environment. Okay, you got it? The chances is far more, and the survival of young one is more because the proper embryonic care and protection inside the mother's body. Example, birds and reptiles hatch outside their body, they lay eggs, and most of the animals like human, cow, lion, tiger, etc., all the mammals in actually give rise to the viviparous in a viviparous manner. In this diagram, the somatic embryogenesis is shown after the fertilization, how the embryogenesis occurs in a period of time. And in this, the fertilization in case of humans it is shown here, then the day 2 cleavage occurs, then compaction, then differentiation, then cavitation, then several process undergoes, and at last the amniotic sac enlargement occurs, mesoderm spread, and at last the individual is laid outside the body in a viviparous manner. So, thank you for listening and have a nice day.